Moin Moin and welcome to Ralph's Photo Booth. Yeah, today I want to present you the new DSLR from Nikon. After the D610, the full frame camera for the not low budget but mid budget photographers, comes now the big one, the D810. That's the follow-up of the D800, full frame sensor, 36 megapixel, so perfect picture quality, very detailed picture, crisp, sharp, so real nice camera. So what's the difference between the D800 and the D810? So there are some minor changes. One is the autofocus system, the second one is the video function, and so these are the most important two things which change from the D800 to the D810. Talking about the megapixel, the D810 is the only camera, the only DSLR in the market with a 36 megapixel sensor. The only choice or only option you have is the Sony Alpha 7R. This is also a camera with a 36 megapixel full frame sensor. Both cameras, I don't know if they have the same sensor, but Nikon doesn't produce the sensors by themselves. They buy the sensors and they buy them from Sony. So they may have the same sensor, or not exactly, but the basic of the sensors is the same, the 36 megapixel sensor of the D810 and the one which works in the Sony Alpha 7R. So about the picture quality, I don't want to talk about the picture quality in detail, because the best thing to decide about the picture quality is go to my Flickr account, Ralph's Fotobude. I will post the link under the video, and there you will find a set of different pictures in the different ISO steps, so you can compare them by yourself and you can see how detailed, how crisp, how clear the picture of the D810 is. I think that's the most detailed picture you can get out of a DSLR in the market. And even the high ISO quality is also real good. I'm astonished, because usually if you have a camera with a 36 megapixel on a full frame sensor, you should think that the high ISO quality is not real good. But no, the high ISO quality is also good. You can go up to 1600 for sure, but I think also 3200 ISO is a real good setting to get some real good pictures. Yes, there's a little bit noise, a little bit less details, but still a real good picture quality compared to an APS-C camera with a 24 megapixel. So let's have a look to the camera. I will give you an overview of the camera. I will give you some information about the settings. I will show you the menu of the D810. So if you think about buying the camera, you will see a lot of the functions you will get, and if you have a D810, it's a little tutorial to work with the D810. First of all, the camera is perfect in the hand. The grip is perfect, the grip is big enough, and all the functions and the buttons are very good reachable with your thumb and your fingers. So that's a real ergonomic camera, like the other Nikons too. So if you know the Nikon philosophy, you will see that this one is not very different to the other cameras like the D610 or the D7100. The menus are almost the same, and the function buttons are also very similar to the other professional Nikon cameras. So first of all, if you have a look on top of the camera, you will see that there's no program dial on the camera. Usually you have on the left side the program dial, but at this camera you don't have a program dial. On the left side of the camera you have a dial, but set up with 4 buttons. You can choose the quality, you can choose white balance, ISO, and the metering. These are the 4 buttons where you can direct set up the different settings. I will show you how this will work. And on the right side we have the big display with the most important information. So if you turn on the camera, you have here the most important informations: the shutter speed, aperture, ISO quality, the different meterings, the battery status, and so here are the most important informations. Talking about the philosophy, how the camera works, we have 2 dials, 2 important dials at the camera. We have the front dial here, and we have the back dial here at this at the thumb rest. And so with these 2 dials you basically make the settings of the camera. Talking about the different modes, PASM, just press the mode button and then turn the back dial of the camera, and you will see we change between M manual, S or P program mode, S shutter speed, and A aperture. So these are the 4 different settings you have. There are no more programs in the camera, no scene programs or stuff like this. You only have PASM. So you should know how to take pictures, and you should know by yourself if you take a picture for sport or for landscape or portrait, how to make the settings. So that's very important. You don't have any scene programs or stuff like this. Talking about the 2 dials, I will give you an example by just working with the quality button. Just press the info button here, and then you will see the most important informations here on the big screen of the backside. And now I press the quality button, and here you see you have the L, and you here have normal. And now when you turn the front dial, you can change between the different resolutions: small, medium, and large. And with the back dial you can change between the different settings for JPEG and RAW. We have, starting with the JPEG format, we have fine or normal, then we have or basic, then we have raw and fine, we have raw and normal, we have raw and basic, then we have only raw, or we have the option to take pictures in TIFF. So these are the different functions, and it's very easy. One is the front dial, one is the back dial, and there you can change between the 2 settings. Looking at the ISO setting, if we press the ISO button with the front dial, you change between ISO and ISO auto, and with the back dial you change the setting of the ISO. So let's have a look at the ISO setting. It's a good chance to look at the ISO setting. The lowest standard ISO setting is 64, and then we have low 0.3, 0.7, and low 1.0. And low 1.0, that's ISO 32. Going up to the higher ISO settings, the highest normal ISO setting is 12,800, and then we go up to high 0.3, 0.7, high 1, that's 26,000, and then high 2, that's 51,200. That's the highest ISO setting you can make. So again, the front dial changed between ISO and auto ISO, and the back dial changed between the different ISO settings. One very important point where you use the different dials is when you want to make changes in the autofocus settings. First of all, when we look for the different focus settings, we have the dial here in front of the camera, and there you can change between manual focus and autofocus. So if you're in autofocus, There you see there's a small button just in this lever, and if you press this button you can set up the different autofocus settings. And what different autofocus settings we have, I will show you now. Again, press the info button, and now, and now press the info button, and now if you press the autofocus button on the front of the camera, you will see we have the display here, and with the back dial you can change between AFS, autofocus single, and AFC, autofocus continuous. There is no setting autofocus A for automatic, because if you work like a pro, you don't want to let the camera decide which autofocus setting you get. You want to set it by yourself. You want to decide by yourself if you have the autofocus single or if you have the autofocus continuous for taking pictures with moving subjects, or like playing kids or sport or something like this, and then you have to go to C. With the front dial you can change between the different autofocus mode. First of all, we have the single autofocus, where we only have one autofocus field, which we can move with a four-way button to the place we want to have to set up the autofocus. Then we have the auto, where the camera decided by herself which field it takes for the autofocus. Then we have GRP, that's the new autofocus option you have. There you can combine 4 autofocus points around the center point, and the camera tries to go to the center point, but if the center point is not good enough to get a clear autofocus metering, the camera goes to the 4 points around the center field and makes a second metering, a second autofocus metering, and so the chance to get a real autofocus, a perfect sharp picture is much higher. So that's GRP, and these are the 3 settings in autofocus single. Going to autofocus continuous, we have again the single field, and then we have, wrong direction, on the front dial we have 9 autofocus fields, which you also can move in the 51 point area. Then we have the 21 autofocus fields, which you also can move, and then we have the 51 fields and the 3D, where the camera tries to follow subjects which are moving in front of the camera. And then we have again the GRP mode with the 4 autofocus fields around the center autofocus, which you can also move for sure. And that's it, and auto. So these are the different settings in the autofocus mode. So press the button and turn the front dial to set the different autofocus settings, and turn the back dial to change between autofocus single and autofocus continuous. Exactly the same as when you work in the live view mode. If you press the live view button, you will see we're in the live view mode, and here in the live view mode you have exactly the same. Pressing the button you can change between AFF and AFS, single and follow, and so with the front dial you change between the white field, you see it here in red, that's the white field, and the normal field, that's a little bit smaller, and then you have the follow-up field, where you can point on a subject in your scene, and the camera tries to follow up this one. And last but not least, you have the face recognition mode, where the camera tries to find the face and focus on the face and follow the face. So again, on the back dial you have the different AF and AFS setting, and on the front dial you can change between the different autofocus setting. And this goes all through the menus, and this go all to the settings of the camera. If you want to change white balance or something else, It's always exactly the same, front dial, back dial, and you have to know which function is on it, and so you can change the most important settings of the camera very fast, and that's very good because the pro want to work fast. You don't want to go into menus and want to change the different settings in the menus, so that's very easy to do it with the 2 dials and the direct button for the different settings. If you want to make exposure correction, you have the plus minus button here on top of the camera. Go out of the live view, and if you press the button here, you see we can make the different corrections. You see it in the display, +1 and -1 f-stop. If you want to choose the bracketing function, the bracketing function is a little bit hidden because I think this is a little bit unusual, but because I would think if you press the plus-minus button, the front dial would change between the bracketing function and the back dial would set the bracketing function. But no, we have a special bracketing button here, and the bracketing button is here on the front side of the camera, just over the autofocus button. And if you press the bracketing button, you see, just press the info field, you see now the bracketing is off. On the back dial, you can decide how much pictures you want to take, 3 frames, 5 frames, 7 frames, 9 frames, and with the front dial, you set up the f-stops, 0.3, 0.7, 1 f-stop. If you go higher than 1 f-stop, the camera goes down to 5 frames, and that's it. So you can make up 5 frames with 3 f-stops, or you can make up the highest 9 frames with 1 f-stop. If you want to switch off the setting, just go the bracketing function, just go to off, and that's it. So bracketing function, special button here on the front side of the camera. Talking about the dial here on top of the camera, you see we have a dial here, and with this dial you can set up the different speeds of the camera. S for single, you have the button here on the front side, you have to press the button to turn the dial. S is for single, C is continuous low, CH is continuous high, Q is for quiet mode, QC is for quiet continuous, self-timer, and MUP, that's mirror up. If you choose mirror up, the camera flips the mirror up and then makes the picture. So that's important for like macro photography, where the camera has to stay very stable and don't have to shake. So that's the reason why we have the mirror up function. The different speeds you can set up in the camera. The speed, the highest frame rate is 6 frames per second. That's a little bit higher than the D810. I think the D810 was 5 or 4 frames per second. Now we have 6 frames per second, and you can set up in the menu what the continuous low speed is. I will show you later in the menu. Next point, we have the connections here at the side of the camera. First of all, we have the HDMI output, and yes, the HDMI output is a live HDMI output. So if you go on the live view of the camera will give you the live picture, so you can set up a monitor and control the picture. Then we have the USB and the special port. We have the microphone and the headphone connector. And on the front side of the camera, we have the remote control and the sync button for the flash. So these are the most important buttons of the camera. One thing, if you're in the, I should mention one thing which happens sometimes is when you're in the mode and want to set up, I will have to go to the single autofocus field. So let's see, here we are in the single autofocus field. You can move the autofocus field with the 4-way button. Sometimes it happens that you can't move it. The reason is very simple, because the lever here, or the dial, is on L for lock, and if it's on lock, the 4-way button is locked, so you have no chance to move the point. Just unlock the button and then you have no problem to move the points. If you look through the viewfinder, you will see the point moving also. So if you look through the viewfinder and press the 4-way button, you will see the red square which moves in the autofocus field, and so you can set up the point very exactly. So if you want to make like a portrait, you can put the point to the eye of the person and then make your picture. So it's not only on the back side, it's also in the viewfinder, where you can see where the autofocus point is. On the back side, we have not only the info button where we get the whole information, we also have the I button, and the I button is like a shortcut or quick menu, because here we have different functions which you can set up directly without going into the menu. So if you want to change the active delighting, here you can change it by pressing the button, and then you're directly in the menu. You can set up the different modes for color space. So it's like a quick menu which you can set up individually, the different points. Yeah, so let's have a look to the menu of the D810. As I said before, if you are used to work with Nikon cameras, the menu, there are not many surprises in the menu. It's like the professional Nikon menus, but for photographers who want to buy the camera or don't know the menu very good, I will give you an overview of the menu. So let's start here. We have at the side, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different top menus. We have the playback menu, we have the shooting menu, the custom setting menu, the setup menu, the retouch menu, and my menu. In the playback menu, you will find the usual things like delete, playback folder, and stuff like that. So I don't go into deep in this menu. Next, and the important menu is the shooting menu, and here we have shooting menu banks. We have A, B, C, D. There you can set up different shootings, different shooting settings. So you can use the A for like portrait, B for landscape, C for sport, and so on. So that's very easy to change between the different settings. You don't have to change all the menus in the camera, just go from A to B or something else. And so you change very fast and very easy to the different settings of the camera. Extended menu bank is also possible. Storage folder, file naming, primary slot selection. We have 2 slots at the camera. We have an SD slot and a CF card slot, which is here on the side of the camera. Here we have the SD and the compact flash slot. And you can decide how the secondary slot function is. Here you can decide if it's overflow, backup, or RAW on primary and JPEG on secondary. Next point is the image quality. I showed you before in the while pressing the quality button here on top of the camera. We have JPEG, basic, normal, fine, TIFF, RAW, and the combination RAW, basic, normal, and RAW, fine. So these are the different settings. Then we have the JPEG and TIFF recording, image size, large, medium, and small, and we have the JPEG compression, optimal quality, or size priority. Next point is the RAW recording. Also we have here the uncompressed, compressed, or lossless compressed option, and we can choose between 14 and 12-bit depths of the RAW file. image area. Here you can choose between the FX and the DX format. So if you have some older DX lenses, or you have DX lenses, and you can choose, or you can use them, you can use them on the D810. If you have auto DX crop, the camera will recognize, okay, that's a DX lens, and change to the DX format. Also, you can set up it by yourself for the different settings. You see we have the DX format, or we have the smaller and the bigger format. So if you want to choose another image area than the full frame. White balance, we have different options here, and for sure also the option to choose the color temperature in Kelvin. Next point is the picture control. It's usually the other brands name it picture style or stuff like that. I think it's a little bit confusing to talk picture control, because I think it's only a picture style or a color which you can set up. Here we have standard, neutral, vivid, monochrome, portrait, landscape, and flat. And in each option we have individualize, the option to individualize with quick adjust, sharpening, clarity, contrast, brightness, saturation, and hue. And going back to the monochrome, very important, in the monochrome you also have the option to set up different filter effects. You have the yellow, the orange, red and green filter. If you're outdoors and want to take a nice picture with the blue sky and want to get the blue sky real dark and the clouds real white, then you should use the orange or the red filter. If you make portraits, use the green filter, because the skin is very good transferred to black and white with the green filter, and the lips, the red lips, are a little bit more dark, and so the face is real nice in the black and white reproduction. Therefore is the green filter. Next point is the toning. There you can make a sepia toning or a blue toning or something else. You also can get green tonings. Also a nice function which you can use in the monochrome setting. So okay, go back to the menu. Then, then we have here you can manage the picture control. You can save what you've done before. Color space, sRGB or Adobe RGB, active delighting, HDR, vignette control for the lenses, auto distortion control for the lenses, long exposure and high ISO noise reduction, ISO sensitivity setup. Here you have the auto sensitivity control. If you want to work with the auto ISO sensitivity control, you can switch it to on, and then you set up the highest sensitivity. You can set up like 6400, and then you can set up the minimum shutter speed. So that's a real nice feature, because usually when you work in auto ISO with other cameras, the camera makes the steps by herself. So if the light is too low, the camera goes one ISO step up, but you can't control exactly at which point the camera makes the next ISO step. Here you can control it very easy and very perfect. Give you an example. You take a picture with ISO 400, shutter speed is 1/250th of the second. And then the lights go a little bit lower. You have 1/125 second, and then the lights goes less down, and then you have you should have 1/60 seconds, and at this point the camera goes one step up with the ISO sensitivity, because you set at the minimum shutter speed should be 1/125 second. So that's how this will work. The shutter speed, the limit, you give the limit, and the camera don't go under the limit. As far as the highest the highest auto ISO setting is reached, then the camera reached the highest ISO auto setting. At this point we set up to 6400. At this point the minimum shutter speed is not longer the value, because then the maximum ISO setting is the value, and the shutter speed is no longer important now. Okay, so let's go back to the menu. We have the multiple exposure option, where you can make multiple exposures. Next point is interval timer shooting, start options, interval, number of interval shoots, exposure smoothing, and time-lapse photography for our time-lapse photographers, where you can also start interval shooting time, set up the different points. Movie setting, here we are on the very important point, and now we come to the truth, because yes, we don't have 4K. Most people thought, okay, new camera, D810, and now we go up the step to the 4K mode, but no, not the 610, not the 4DS, not the 810, none of the cameras has the 4K mode. But what we have 60p and 50p in full HD resolution, so that's a step up from the D800. So 60p, 50p, and the lower frame rates and the small HD resolution, but no 4K. I'm so sorry. Movie quality, high or normal, and the different microphone settings, and that's it. You can shoot the movies exactly in the same way like you take pictures, so you have the different settings, PASM, so you can choose between the settings and set the aperture by yourself and work with real nice depth of field settings with the camera. Going up from the shooting menu to the custom setting menu, and this one is a real big one, and there are lots of options. I don't want to explain all the options. I only want to give you a glimpse, and you can see which options are important for you. One of the most important options is here at the beginning of the autofocus section. We have the AFC priority selection and the AFS priority selection. What does it mean? We can choose between release, end focus, end focus. The thing is, when you take pictures in autofocus continuous, like in sport or fast moving subjects or something like this, you want to get the picture even if the camera is not exactly on the focus. And that's why you should use release. Because if you use release, the camera makes the picture even if the focus is not perfect on the point, but you get the picture. You can see I set it to release, and I will go to autofocus continuous. Just give me a second. I will go on autofocus continuous, and you see I can shoot around and the camera releases even if I know here on the gray the camera doesn't get the focus point. So that's the reason why you should use there the setting autofocus priority selection. So let's look what happens if we go to focus. You will see the difference immediately. You hear nothing happens. Now, yes, but it takes a time because the camera has to focus, and so that's the difference between autofocus with shutter priority or autofocus with the focus priority. And exactly the same, I go back to release, and exactly the same is in the section for the autofocus single. But in the autofocus single, I would put it on focus, because usually you make portraits or stuff like that, you make still lifes, and then you want to get the focus perfect, and you have time, you have a little bit more time as an autofocus continuous, and therefore you should set the priority selection to focus. Okay, so focus tracking, AF activation, focus point illumination in the viewfinder, number of focus points. Here you can choose between 51 and 11 autofocus points. If you have 11 autofocus points, here we are. You see we only have these 11 points. I would suggest usually, in my opinion, it's absolutely better to go with 51 autofocus points. Then we have store by orientation for landscape and portrait mode, built-in AF illuminator, autofocus mode restrictions, ISO settings, EV steps, and so on, matrix metering. You see we have a lot of functions here. We have the self timer, we have the beep function, and here is the CL mode shooting speed. That's what I said before. If you turn the dial here on the top of the camera to CL, also continuous low, here you can set up which speed the camera should use, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 frames per second. I choose the middle 3 frames per second. And you can say how many continuous pictures the camera should make in the different continuous modes. Exposure delay, electronic front shot, and file number. So you see we have the different battery orders. You can put a battery grip under the camera and decide which battery should be used first. Flash sync speed, and so on and so on. You see there are so many points. Then we have the different settings for the buttons here. We have an FN button which you can set up. The FN button is on the front of the camera. It's here. You can see here there's the FN button and the exposure button, and you can set up here what you want to put on the button. You can put the viewfinder grid display or something else, viewfinder virtual horizon. So there are different settings, and you also can assign the preview button, the AEL, AFL button here, and so on. You can customize the command dials. You see there are many points you can customize in the camera, and there are many points which you can use to customize the D810 and make the setting individually as you like it. Next point is the setup menu, and in the setup menu you find the usual things like format the memory card, monitor color, white balance, and so on and so on. You have the language, you have battery info, you have the time and data setting and HDMI setting, and that's it. So these are mainly the usual things which you can find in every setup menu. Next point is the retouch menu. Honestly, I don't think that any pro will use the retouch menu, but okay, it's in the camera, and here you have different settings for red eye correction, trim, monochrome, filter effects, and stuff like this. You can make a JPEG out of an F file. That might be an interesting point. So if you're shooting in RAW and you want to show a picture on a computer where you don't have an RAW converter, you can convert the RAW file in the camera. So that might be one option you can use. And last is My Menu, where you can individualize the menu. So you see there are a lot of menu settings, there are a lot of special points where you can set up the camera very individual like you want. One point which I should mention is the built-in flash. The big other camera brand Canon has no built-in flash in their profi and semi-profi cameras. I don't know why, because I know the Pro will work with a big flash, but honestly, if you work with 2 or 3 slave flashes for indirect lighting, in my opinion, it's very useful to have the built-in flash, because if you wouldn't have the built-in flash, you have to buy a 4th or 3rd flash only as a master flash. And so at this point, You have the built-in flash as a master flash, and so you don't have to buy an extra flash here for the camera, because usually when you work indirect with 2 or 3 flashes, usually you don't use the main flash here of the camera, because you don't want to light up the model or the scene directly. You want to light up indirect or from the back side or something else like this. So usually you use only the flash here on the camera as a master flash, but not for lighting up the scene. So in my opinion, that's very good that the D810 has a small built-in flash. Okay, so these are the main functions and main features of the D810 36 megapixel, sorry for this, 36 megapixel full frame sensor. No other DSLR has more megapixel in a full frame sensor. Next step is the Pentax 6x4 mid-format camera, but in the DSLR class, the D810 has the highest megapixel. As I said before, the only one which has also a sensor like this is the Alpha 7R system camera. Yeah, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it helped you a little bit either to decide to buy the camera, or if you have the camera, to get a little bit into the menus to understand how the camera works with the 2 dials and the direct buttons, and hope it helps you a little bit more to understand how this will work. Thank you for watching me. If you like my video, please give me a like here on my YouTube channel, subscribe my YouTube channel, and again, you will find test pictures, ISO RAWs, on my Flickr account. The address is under the video, so you will find it directly, because I don't think it's very comfortable to show pictures here in a video, because the video resolution is so low, so it's very difficult to show and compare the different resolutions and the picture quality. As I said before, it's outstanding picture quality, very detailed, and that's, you will see on my Flickr account, very good and better than here in a video. Thank you for watching me. Come back again. There are coming up some more nice videos in the next few days. And so I thank you for watching me, and as every time, moin moin.